The problem we have is that there's so much stuff being created that actually how do we get heard in the kind of cacophony of voices that there are online? And that's something that I think we'll try and think about later. And actually the stuff that Vision On do with aggregation is one quite interesting kind of solution to some of those problems.
Yes, we can use aggregation as a way of amplifying kind of the voices that we have. So if you're producing some content, you might be producing your campaign's got a nice blog, and you're producing some videos and some cool media. But we need to get traffic. You need to get that voice out there, get that voice heard, which is kind of one of the reasons people really like things like corporate stuff like Facebook and things like that. It allows you to connect really easily with lots of people. So you can produce some content and you can get people to share that, and these things can get spread out really quickly, really easily. Okay, which is really nice, but which is good. It's a good use for these things, as long as we don't depend on these things for places to store our content. I mean, if we rely on there was the issues last year with the student protests, and they had some pages, didn't they, around the network 123 events. And they were set up with pseudonyms, and suddenly Facebook went away and wiped away those pieces of content, which kind of denied people the access to those organising tools and networks that they'd kind of built, because they're built specifically on top of that platform, and that was kind of that was probably a tactical error on their part, you know. That's not to say you can't push your content into these spaces and use it as a platform. For the people who are already locked into these kind of these closed platforms, if you've got their content in there, there's no reason why you shouldn't push them in and use Facebook's servers to distribute your content. We don't need to rely on, we can't rely on those things. So I mean, so for me, we're really at quite an interesting stage with the technologies. I was just saying there about there's lots of really interesting tools that are hitting kind of maturity and usability now. That are not based on centralised walled garden spaces that are controlled by new capitalist media companies, which is just old money again. But as well as using we can start building and using those platforms in parallel to the systems that are like Facebook and the Twitter services that are out there, Blogger and WordPress. I mean, there was the issue with WordPress. There was a lecturer in Manchester who was very critical of some of the work Manchester University was doing, and WordPress, after an inquiry by the Manchester University about who was producing these critical articles, released the lecturer's details, who's now being sued by Manchester University, and it's like a bit of a pain in the pain for that person now, yeah. There was the councillor who was publishing content into Twitter who was critical of a London borough, and Twitter got a court order and released the details of the councillor. So now he's kind of, he's wishing he'd found alternate platforms to be able to publish his content through.
If you were working on a distributed communication platform, though, like if everyone's using StatusNet, would the information that enables you to find out who is running a particular what do you call things like Twitter and StatusNet?
Microblogging.
Yeah. With the information that's to enable you to find out who a particular user is not be more distributed, so it would be more easy to find out who the person is?
Well, no, I tend to disagree with that.
It's a technical question, I'm not sure.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think it's a really interesting question, because one of the things we have as we move towards kind of a completely decentralised peer-to-peer network. Compare, like, say, we'll get Facebook, which is a homogeneous walled garden, and we could have a completely decentralised network where everybody's running their own servers, connected to their own mesh networks, okay? Somewhere in between that, we've got a situation where the services are federated, okay? Where you've got like a bunch of people will get together and like email's a great example of federation, okay? Email's a peer-to-peer network, but you're at adomain.com, I'm say at activix.org, and you're at Gmail, I don't know, you're at some riseup.net perhaps, yeah, okay, you're at somewhere else, yeah, okay? So there's a bunch of people sharing those spaces, okay? When we build a federated network, the question for me is really, is how do you decide where a good place to be? How do you decide where to live? Where's a good place to put your content? The network's federated, so some spaces will have different rules and means of behaviour than other spaces. Okay, so you might decide to live in a federated space where you expect the systems administrators to be mining all the data and all the content and keeping all the logs and all the files and the data of what's going on, who's connected and that, and expecting them to monetize that information. Or you could be host your content in a server in another where the server was set up in a way that there wasn't any logging going on, and it was hosted in a place where there might be a legal regime to protect your freedom of speech. Okay, so an example around that is when we host servers on the internet, you can choose: do we host them in the UK? Do we host them in America? Do we host them in Canada? Do we host them, say, in Iceland? Okay, whereas the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative is coming in. That would protect freedom of speech. So if I was going to set up my blogging platform, okay, where people I'm going to be expecting to have lots of dissenting and possibly I don't want any libel tourism affecting me, I might want to host my blog servers in Iceland, where the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative might protect the privacy of my of the people within our community and their voices against somebody getting a super injunction out against us to take down some pages or pass some information out.
Well, what I don't know is, I mean, you're talking about where you host your StatusNet instance, for example. The technical aspect of how it's federated, that's what I don't understand. I'm not sure when you federate the different instances of a particular platform together, what kind of data is it that's shared between those instances, and are you not sort of like throwing off more sort of data exhaust? Is there not more data lying around places?
Well, I think there's probably enough of it anyway. I don't. Well, that's the probably I don't know. Okay, I don't know. But it was stand up.
Can I just come in and say that the internet is set up as a stupidly trusting peer-to-peer network. It's stupidly open and stupidly trusting, and that's fantastic because it's why it's destroyed twice billions of dollars of corporate infrastructure. So anything you put on the internet, no matter how secure you make it, treat it as if it was in public. If you want to do anything that you want to do in secret, whisper to people in the pub, go in the park and whisper them from there. Do not put anything you want to do in secret on the internet. I can't stress that enough. I just want to highlight that. Basically, one of the outcomes I'd like to see from this meeting is an activist security group. An activist security group that looks not only at the technical side of security, because that's what currently we look at. We look only at the technical side of security, but also the social side. For example, it would be mad for the authorities not to have installed a secret policeman in your favourite activist server. We know that they have secret policemen in all our activist groups. You know, they've all come out in the newspapers. So it would be utter madness for them not to have some security geek running your activist server. So all your secure stuff is available to the secret police. Take that for granted. If this encryption security you're using isn't actually protecting you, because we have these trust networks where we don't really know each other. So this server somewhere is bound to be run by a secret policeman. Just presume it is. So unless you're using peer-to-peer security tools, that's the only ones that you can actually trust, where it's you having security on your machine, talking directly to someone. So if it goes through an activist server, I wouldn't trust the security.
Just so I know what you're talking about, could you actually name some names in terms of...
secret policeman?
No. In terms of
I know a few.
peer-to-peer security versus the thing you said before.
A peer-to-peer security would be email PGP, where that actually is email is a peer-to-peer relationship. So I would trust that probably.
But not sort of.
But it's still going to pass through. You can't control, let's say, the routing of that. So it's still going to pass through SMTP servers, which you can't trust.
But it's encrypted on your machine, then it's decrypted on the other machine. So it's as secure as you can get. Yeah. So what I would like to see from this meeting, I'd like some outcomes from this meeting, is an activist security group that looked at the social side of security. Because actually all these secure technical projects we're actually building are not secure from a social point of view. They're utterly inadequately insecure from a social point of view. So thus I think we're endangering people by encouraging people to use them. That's a kind of polemic statement from me. But I think it's true. So how can we get around this? How can we build social security into... Or maybe we can't. Maybe the internet is inherently open and actually the things we do on the internet just have to be open. That's my thought.
But we're going to end up sooner or later down to the, as you say, the question of trust. Because as you say, probably the only secure one is if you and I meet in a room, we exchange keys and we trust each other and we know each other trust. So we come down to, it's always key exchange at the end of the day. Fundamentally, that's the question people always bang their heads against.
Well, but you don't have to meet somebody to exchange the key, because you can publicly exchange a public key to decrypt, encrypt, and have your private key.
Yeah, my point being though, if I go and use your public key from a key server or get it from a web server, I don't actually know it's yours unless I actually have some way of really knowing that the key is the right key for the right person and not someone pretending to be somebody. There's still that element of doubt.
One thing I would say, getting back to your original point about if you post some data, kind of the examples of kind of council workers or university workers who posted things and then ended up getting traced, that's usually done off IP numbers. And corporate services all log everyone's IP numbers because it's one of the ways that they track you, and it's a really efficient way of being able to uniquely identify who you are. There are activist projects like indie media sites which have a policy of we don't log IP addresses, which means you can't do the kind of data analytics and traffic analysation that corporate websites do, but it does mean that people have a layer of security against the police coming and saying, okay, we're going to seize your server, we're going to look through the list of IP addresses, this is the date and time of the posting, this is the IP address, okay, now we know which computer this has been sent from, off we go. In Bristol, we actually had, at one point we were hosting our server at someone's house, probably wasn't a great idea, but the police actually came and said, right, well, there's been this post about direct action, stuff's been trashed, it was on your server, we're taking this away, looking through it to find out who it was, and of course they came back and said, alright, you don't log IP data, this is completely useless to us, which actually is quite useful for us now, because if ever we get kind of legal threats about people saying, oh, someone posted this libelous or defamatory thing, well, the police have already said we don't have any data that will help you to identify who that person is. So there are tools which try and safeguard your security somewhat more so than corporate platforms where actually your privacy really isn't their concern. So Intermedia is one thing you can use. Tor is another thing which is quite useful if you want to try and conceal identity. Do people know what Tor is? Yeah? So basically it's a system, it's called the Onion Router. You send your information into a network of proxies where it gets bounced around loads of places and comes out from somewhere else that isn't you. And actually the last place that it comes out of that network is identifiable, and so that would be the IP address that's associated with the data, but it's not you and it's not easily traceable back to you. So if you're wanting to post things in a secure way to a site that is going to be monitoring IP addresses, Tor is probably a good option for that.
Is that a peer-to-peer tool or a client-server? It's peer-to-peer, isn't it?
Tor is peer-to-peer because it's bouncing around the peer-to-peer network.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
That operating a Tor network is a good way of supporting other people for, you're providing a service for them to run through your segment of the network as well.
And you can choose whether to be an inside link or an exit server, can't you? So, if you are not in a position to take the risk of being an exit server, you can nevertheless still strengthen the network by being, I can't remember what the term is, but an internal server, we say just a link inside.
What would be the risks of being an exit node?
The fact that your controversial material would originate from your IP address, and what they recommend is that you make it very clear on a web page on that server, whatever, this is a Tor exit server, and so that hopefully the law enforcement look at you and go, well, it's no point in going after that, it won't tell us anything.
If the ALF had fireballed on some chicken farm somewhere, it would come from your IP address and the police would kick down your door and steal your computer equipment.
But I mean, ideally they'd do what happened to Si and nothing to see here sort of thing.
You'd have discipline.
Please put it down.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's a gentleman behind you.
To contradict things, because you're saying about indie media, they don't log IP addresses, but this appears saying, you know, you've got to assume that there's secret policeman running the intermedia service. You know, then he wouldn't be logging. So when the police go after, you know, after that, it depends how important it is to them to get it by using data from their IP addresses. They're revealing the fact that they have a secret policeman there, and it might not be important enough for them to do that. So they might not, you know, they might not prosecute someone because that would reveal the fact that the intermediary is actually logging IP addresses into the police. You know, so.
Well, that depends whether or not they could classify you as a terrorist, and then they wouldn't have to reveal where they got certain information from.
Oh, well, whatever they don't like.
Well, exactly. It's
Well,
not hard,
it's
is
the
it?
thing, as admins we can go and see that mod remove IP, which is something which cleans out all IP addresses, is something that's installed on our servers. So unless there's some kind of hideously technical thing, because actually all the intermediate techs are secret policemen, then I'll have to disagree with that. And actually, again, like based on our experience of having someone nicked with technology, the police are fucking clueless. To the point that actually, when they nicked Tom and sat him down, first thing they said to him, while pointing at this server with a load of wires coming out of it and a modem, do you deny that this is your wireless network? Yes. And the police get really confused. It's like, what is it then? It's a fucking wired network. You see all the cables. Like, the police are not, certainly the police who deal with on a day-to-day level are not very tech savvy, but that's not, of course, to say that there aren't other bits of kind of counterintelligence which would be.
Okay, sorry for being late, everyone, but have you touched on HTTPS?
No, we haven't.
Okay.
Was that what, Hamish, you were referring to when you said that was something you wouldn't trust?
What do you mean, wouldn't trust?
You said sort of peer-to-peer encryption and security technologies are generally trustworthy, whereas
client server is inherently problematic. Inherently, you can mediate the damage, but I think, for example, you've got a very small Bristol intermediate, but UK intermediate, I don't know who's running the server. I kind of know, and actually some of them are very bonkers. You know.
So, what were you going to say about?
I was just going to say, in terms of the content that could travel over the Tor network, you know, that you can hide some of that content by encoding it in, you know, the AES encryption or whatever works with HTTPS. So what is it? The Electronic Frontier Foundation have got an HTTPS Everywhere project, which gives plugins for Internet Explorer or Firefox to allow you to, as exclusively as you want really, to talk to other servers, other websites in terms of HTTPS, which I don't understand the technology completely, but I believe it actually encrypts your queries, your actual URL. Is the URL open? The URL is open.
I think so.
No,
But
no,
it's
no. Only the host part of the URL will be open because the internet where you connect into everything after the slash.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you go into HTTPS we.riseup.net/our secret project to blow up the state, our secret project to blow up the state will be invisible.
Cool.
Yeah.
And everything that's directly communicated with that server thereafter.
Yeah.
But of course, the server that you're talking to has got to be set up to support HTTPS and it's got to have a certificate, and where the certificate comes from, and do you trust that certificate? It's still not, unfortunately, a get out of jail free card.
Decrypted on the server at the other end, presumably.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if that security server is compromised, and I would presume that every activist server is compromised. I would just presume that. It's not true, but I would just as a good security model, I presume it is.
Well, there's kind of two different things we're talking. I mean, we started talking about like alternatives to Facebook and Twitter, which is the purpose is to sort of broadcast something, and then I think that's different from what you're talking about is when you actually want to do things in secret. It's two different use cases, really.
It's an open security model where your defence is you do everything in the open, and then there's a closed security model where you whisper at each other in the corridors or in the pub, and then there's this kind of in between where there's this digital security model where you can communicate with each other in digital via the peer-to-peer or client server on the internet, and I think that's actually very problematic, and I think we need to have a group of people who can't look at every project and give it a rating. You know, social security 0, technical security 10. You know, a lot of them will come out with these glaring contradictions. I'd love, you know, a group of geeks to get together and sort of have this 3-scale rating on all activist projects: social security, technical security, and maybe one other criteria, usability. You know, just rate every project. So they put a badge on their site saying my project is hugely technically secure, completely unsocially secure, and kind of unusable. Our site is, very technically unsecure, but completely usable and socially okay. I'd quite like to have this information so we can make informed choices.
There is also, sorry, I think you're referring to, there is also, say, if there was the Facebook situation, is you're not actually necessarily wanting to secure the communication, but you're wanting to have good control over the data that you put in, so only the data you want is published and it's there. So that's another aspect, isn't it, which is not about secure communication in that sense, but just a holding of where data is held and how it's controlled.
And it's gatekeepers, because when you put something on Facebook, it doesn't go to all your followers. Facebook decides where it goes. And actually nowadays, all the stuff Vision on TV, almost nobody sees it. Facebook is building algorithms to stop the stuff that we're putting in Facebook being seen by anybody. So it's just our viewing figures are dropping over the last 6 months of Facebook till they're almost non-existent. We're posting Facebook that's having no effect whatsoever, because Facebook algorithms are just they're treating it as undesirable, because their algorithms are selling stuff through, stuff which sells crap to people. Facebook has a political agenda, and what we're doing doesn't fit into it at all. So we're becoming, without us knowing, invisible on Facebook.
Is that intentional, or is it just the algorithms automatically filtering out?
What we're doing is disrupting and annoying people. What corporations are doing is selling them things that they need to buy. So as far as Facebook is concerned, they're pushing up the corporate agenda and pushing down our agenda, because all our stuff's all bad news.
Sure. I'm wondering how intentional that is.
I don't know. That's a good question.
Facebook's filtering algorithms tend to work on a basis that when people click like on stuff or when they repost stuff, it's seen as something that's popular and gets rebroadcast more widely. So you do get a kind of little filter bubble around the things that you've clicked like on in the past, because Facebook decides that's the only stuff you're interested in, so if it's not related to that, actually you won't bother showing them that. Like maybe if they go to the Vision on TV group page or profile page, then we'll think, oh, maybe they are interested in Vision On. But actually one of the things I've been kind of interested in doing for a while and never quite had the time to do is kind of activist social media marketing, because one of the things, people have this idea that kind of on the internet content is king, and if you create something that's good, that it'll go viral, millions of people will see it and potentially change the world. And that might have been true in kind of 2002, but it's really not anymore. When you see lots of the viral videos and things that are made that become really big, the reason that they get really big is that they will have a social media marketing company employed to push them. And so what happens is you'll have 10 people whose job it is to work for 3 days when that video is produced pushing it. So each of the people working in that office will have 15 YouTube accounts, 15 Facebook accounts, 15 Twitter accounts, 15 StumbleUpon, Dig, Reddit accounts, and as soon as that thing is launched, every one of those accounts will be liking, commenting and linking that material as widely as possible. So within, ideally a few hours, certainly within a day of your project going live on the internet, it has thousands of views, a couple of hundred comments, hundreds of likes across platforms, lots of links going back into it. So what happens is the algorithms that are used by Google, by Facebook, and by other people say, oh look, here's something that's really important because loads of people are linking to it. What that means is that we should push this, and suddenly it becomes on like YouTube's most viewed, or kind of you might like this kind of recommendations, which means that again it's something that snowballs, it's a positive feedback loop, it's something that becomes increasingly visible to increasing numbers of people. And actually as activists we don't have systems for doing something like that, and so building a group who would be interested actually in just kind of spamming each other's content to try and make it more visible to more mainstream groups is something that I'd be interested in.
It relates directly to what Hamish was saying in another session yesterday, that lefties don't link for some reason.
Also, actually, in YouTube now, our YouTube figures are going down as well, because actually you buy position. We're a partner in YouTube, so officially, you know, we get access to all the back end of YouTube, how you can promote things. And actually nowadays you buy your position on YouTube. They keep sending us things. Do you want to buy more views? Do you want to be more prominent on the site? Do you want to be more visible on YouTube? Buy this, buy that, buy that. So YouTube isn't bubble into the top of the good videos anymore, and I'd argue that all corporate sites are doing exactly the same. So none of our stuff is going to become visible on corporate sites.
So is that not, Google not committed itself to some ethical standard it wants to hold itself to, specifically rejecting that, but does that search, and it doesn't, for YouTube that's a different thing, you own it, but they're permitting themselves to engage in this kind of selling?
Yes, we get a lot of special offers that we could buy views, or we could buy prominent placing, or if you want to market your video, do this on YouTube and it will cost you this, etc. So YouTube is manipulating, money's coming in, and the people who pay the money now get up to the top of YouTube. The people who have good content don't.
So it's not Google violating its commitment not to buy search ranking, it's other kind of ways of like showing you, so like their adverts on the side of their search page. The other videos are placing you there. They haven't violated their own thing.
I think they're kind of twisting around the words.
Yeah.
There's a company called Tube Mogul who you can get guaranteed views off. I want 100,000 views off social media, and they will guarantee you these 100,000 views, presumably by placing your film on lots of different embeds and things. I don't know. I've never tried it, but it's kind of tempting just to try these things sometimes. But anyway, sorry.
This thing about getting lots of views, you talked about yesterday, and this thing about, say, Facebook. You put stuff on Facebook because everyone's on Facebook. I don't know whether you've already, sorry I was late, talked about alternatives to Facebook here and what people are using. I mean, maybe that will happen. But and yesterday I was thinking it was then mentioned about Wikipedia as a thing that seemed to not be mentioned, and then someone did mention it, but is something which is not corporate in the sense, but has a huge presence, and it's actually quite good to, if you go onto Wikipedia page about even a very recent event, like after the riots, very quickly there was a huge amount of detail on Wikipedia and a lot of discussion in the talk page for that about, as a very visible way of talking about radical, things. You can do it on there, and I was just thinking that's not used enough by activists, but I don't know if during this session we have a chance for people to say which alternatives to Facebook they're using or developing, that kind of thing, to get a kind of overview of what the alternatives are, even though they might be quite small, sort of ghettoized, small activist things, but what those alternatives are.
It might be nice things. We've got about just over an hour left if we moved on to actually talking about some practical examples of things.
Can I just do a technical point? We actually have a wiki on the page, and I'm adding stuff to the wiki, so if anyone wants to join in and edit the wiki with all the lovely links and ideas we come up with, because we built this interactive site, and every session has an open wiki which you can all add to, so put your opinions on every session on the wiki.
Where's that hosted?
It's on live@rebelliousmedia.org.
Okay. This is scheduled to finish at 11. I'd be quite happy to stay till 11:30, but that means we've got half an hour left.
All right. Well, yeah. Let's definitely move on to practical things. So who uses? Who has a corporate email account? Okay. And who has an activist email account?
Defined as obfuscated or
well, some other email account which is not your corporate email.
Yeah. So do people understand what the revenue model for Gmail and Hotmail and Yahoo Mail and stuff is? Yes.
It's advertising, isn't it? Sorry. Advertising.
And how do they target the advertising at you?
Scan your email.
They go through everything you write and read.
Hotmail's a web page with adverts around your emails. Gmail, I'm not sure.
It's a similar thing, but it's what the gentleman here just said. They scan your emails, so everything that's sent to you is scanned, put into their database and fed into the profile. So you've had a bunch of emails about, there have been ridiculous instances of people who've kind of just survived a tsunami or something getting surfing adverts as a result. But it's this idea that you get a free service and the way that you pay for it is with your privacy. It's kind of the same as if we said, well, we won't pay like 30p for a stamp, but we'll just let Royal Mail open all our mail, scan stuff and put it into a database so that they can sell us advertising. And the alternatives are things like Activix, which Alan's involved in, or Rise Up, which are having an email account which is hosted by Activist Tech Collective. and basically you get the same services, but it's hosted somewhere that's probably considerably more secure and certainly aren't trying to monetize your communications. They're providing it because they think actually giving people communications tools is a useful thing, and they're free to sign up for. You don't have, I mean, one of the things that in the past was quite a selling point for the corporate providers were you can have a massive inbox. Like you can have 5 gigabytes worth of email, which is kind of unnecessary, but you could have it if you wanted it, and people kind of say, oh, well, more storage sounds good. With things like Rise Up and I think Activix now, you can put loads of stuff onto their servers, but their model of financing it is that basically people who use the service occasionally donate. Because it's one of the things that is easy to forget with kind of online stuff. There are costs in terms of not only people's time, but the hardware, the electricity, and so the kind of activist model quite often is paid for by donations if you can afford it. But I would certainly say it's worth checking out Rise Up or Activix to get an email account which is completely functional. You don't lose anything other than being spied on by leaving Gmail. So that's one quite practical alternative.
Can I ask how much that does cost to run? Like per email account per year? I mean, the answer could vary per economies of scale and so on. You know, other things you're providing it just roughly.
I mean, the cost isn't per email account. You can have 200 email accounts which are really low traffic and actually cost virtually nothing to run. You can have one email account where, I don't know, you've been attaching loads of high resolution photos or something, and so it involves using a load of hard disk storage. And hard disk storage, again, isn't really expensive, but it does add up if you have thousands of people using like kind of 500 meg each. Like, would you be able to give figures for stuff?
I think RiseUp.net at the moment are running a donations campaign, and they're looking to get about $20,000 to keep their stuff going for another year.
And that's how many sort of accounts does that get you?
They're a really large provider. That's a lot of machines and that's a lot of bandwidth.
But I'm just thinking, email seems such a, you know, insubstantial thing in terms of what
it doesn't weigh much, does it?
What you're sending.
UK now, people just love to send photographs and whatever, so they've grown a lot, and it's bandwidth, I always find, that is the cost. And the other thing is, when you're running a mail server, it's not just your customers. The fact that your server will be receiving and rejecting a lot of traffic just from a huge amount of spam that's out there. And obviously, as a mail admin, you filter all that stuff.
That's all CPU time?
Yes, it's all time on your server. It's, and as I say, to be honest, it's bandwidth more than anything. I find it's just it's the real cost. I don't know. But
is anyone using any other activist email other than Rise Up or Activix, which are the two I know about? And also, the Activix is based in the UK and Rise Up in the United States. So, in terms of, you might want to not use something in the UK if you're doing radical stuff in the UK, because the UK police might have less access to it than somewhere offshore. But then the other one is in the United States. I mean, and is anyone using anything other than those two? I haven't heard really anything.
Well, No Flag they're going to be based in Iceland soon, and
No Flag, is that?
No Flag, yeah, and yeah, I guess we could offer email accounts. Yeah, I mean, we've got a form, you know, like on our site. It isn't specific. I don't think it specifically mentions offering email accounts, but we could provide that. Yeah, and the servers will be based in Iceland. You know, we're moving to Iceland at the moment, but yeah.
We got an email on the back of these pamphlets, which there's a whole list of tech providers on the back of this.
So everyone send them some money.
There was suggested donation of £1 as well. Yeah, maybe wants to give away.
Yeah, I think it's really important when we talk about alternatives to corporate emails or whatever application, we need to talk about usability, because activists or techies tend to have stuff that, okay, it's secure, but it's unusable for everyone. And I haven't seen Rise Up or Activix, but I know my friends don't use alternatives, and even me, because the web clients are awful. And we as geek activists, we really need to get them to that, because nobody's going to use our stuff if it's not usable.
No, so that's an interesting point. But there's a client called Roundcube, which looks a bit like Gmail.
Okay. I haven't really looked into it, but
okay. I think Rise would provide one called. Sorry.
I was just going to just second that, because I think that's the key sort of barrier to adoption. It's this function and form. There's a lot of function, but there's very little form, and it's the form that helps people navigate, especially if they're more mainstream. If you're trying to reach those people, then it's going to help with the marketing aspect as well. People can't use it and they can't access it because it's just too confusing.
So can I just ask how many people here are using webmail, or how many people still use email clients? Because I use email client, I never use webmail. Email client.
Yes.
Does that apply? Do these problems, issues of usability and things apply if it's just a...
Well, I was thinking more generally, not just to email, but just to any sort of general kind of online platform. When you're creating these platforms, I think tech guys do need to think about usability.
From a techie point of view, I mean, I think if you're not a technical person and you want to if you want this to happen, then you need to give feedback, I guess. Because we can't just, we need this feedback so we know what to change,
Sure, but what I'm saying is I think there's a lot of people who might, just go on and go, hang on, I don't get this, and just move on and not even.
Well, if you see problems that you think are a problem and you don't have technical skills, then just give feedback.
Well, I'd come back to that and say that Bugzilla's not that easy to use. Maybe we need
just send an email or whatever.
I think the problem is a lot of people don't take the time to do that because they're lazy.
Yeah, that's true. Designers and technologists, it's like oil and water. It's very hard to hold and emulsify them. And that's a cultural problem which we haven't addressed and we should desperately address, because just saying send an email isn't going to work. Because they're oil and water. So we need to emulsify these two. And that's desperate, I agree, it desperately needs to happen, this emulsification. So who's up for shaking?